Welcome to Romera Records Virtual Cast. Today we have on Jason Sherman. How's it going, Jason?
Hey man, nice to meet you and thanks for having me here.
Oh, thank you for coming on. I've had a few people who are missing in action when it comes to podcasts, so it's great to have people when they actually get it done. And as we were just talking about Zoom, it can be kind of
Yeah,
weird, but yeah.
it
So
can, it can be a challenge, but with the pandemic, like we had to adjust, right?
exactly. That's definitely opened doorways for people to get creative and figure out, how you're gonna do the things that you continue to love to do and actually get it done.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you do some film things, and I really want to get into that because I do like music videos for musicians and stuff like that. So I'd love to pick your brain about what you do in that category, and you've also got a book. So let's start with how you got into the film industry.
Yeah, man, it's a good story because I could have gotten in a lot earlier, and if you listen to filmmakers like famous directors or people that have won Academy Awards or whatnot, they always have the same story. They say at a young age they had an 8 millimeter camera or a 35 millimeter camera. They were kind of giving it a super eight. They were, here you go, kid. At 6 years old, here's a camera, go run around and film stuff. I wasn't one of those kids. I was the kid running around playing with Transformers and GI Joes and all sorts of Star Wars toys. And the film piece when I was a kid was that my grandfather ran a local movie theater. He was the manager. So when my parents would drop me off to see him, he would put me in the projection booth with him, and I would do my homework and eat my lunch and then watch the movie through the little window. So I kind of got fascinated by that. I felt like I was a VIP, I was behind the scenes, and I didn't get into film because of that. It was always kind of lingering and subconsciously in the back of my mind, like film is cool, film is magical, film this, film that. But I never bought a camera and started filming. Nobody gave me a camera and started saying, hey, you should start filming. So you have to fast forward a couple decades until I hit about late 20s, early 30s. It was 2007. And I started Adelphia Entertainment out of nowhere. I just kind of started this business because the catalyst was I created a movie of my dad's life for his retirement party. And it happened to be his 60th birthday party at the same time. So I gathered whatever photos, videos, information I could from my mom, and I cobbled together this really primitive life story with a voiceover and music. And it was really funny. People loved it. They said, you should make movies. Now, this thing is, you do not want to watch this thing. It's like a PowerPoint on steroids. It is not, it's very bad to watch, but it gave me that spark of like, oh, maybe I can get good at this and then make a real movie. So 2007, I started, as you mentioned before, music videos. I started to help production companies make music videos and help production companies work on short films. And as a sponge, the sponge that I am, I just kind of absorbed as much knowledge and information as I could from watching and helping them while I started buying my own equipment, watching every movie going back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, just watching movies from the beginning, reading all the history of film and how transitions and effects came into play, and reading screenplay after screenplay after screenplay to learn the formats. And then I just started shooting stuff. And 2007, 8, 9, those were 2 years I was doing that. And then in 2009, I decided to write my first screenplay. It's actually right behind me, Bucks County Massacre. And I figured, I'm not a horror fan, but it's the easiest thing to shoot. So
Movies?
yeah, horror movies theoretically they're the easiest movies to shoot because it's usually taking place in like one location. Like think Blair Witch Project was like all in the woods.
Mm,
Paranormal Activity all took place in a house. It's very simple stuff, So Bucks County Massacre was my idea was to take both of those, take the woods and the house, and shoot in both of them. So a lot of it takes place outside and a lot of it takes place inside. And it's kind of like a double whammy there. Anyway, I put together this massive crew of like 50 people. Cast and crew. It was like a big set, and it worked out. We did this movie. We won a film festival, and it's not the best movie in the world. Of course, it's my first movie, but I was proud of it, and it did win an award. Got me an agent, got me distribution. Was in like 30 million homes, and I pushed it hard, and that's how I got into film. From there, I built this studio and I bought more equipment. And then years later, so Bucks County Massacre came out in 2010. From 10 to 16, those 6 years, I was then doing commercial work, which is basically filming technology events, music videos, celebrity interviews at Comic-Con, commercials for apps, commercials for products, commercials for businesses, anything I could do, I would do just to get more and more exposure and experience. And then to cut it short here, because it's probably a lot more left, is that 2016, I decided to make another movie. This time it was a documentary. It did really, really well. It was on WHYY PBS, won a film festival, premiered in a lot of theaters, got a lot of news around it, a lot of newspapers, front page newspapers, a lot of news on TV. And then again, another 5 years later, you can't really see it over here, this poster right over there, Cutting Corners. I just did that during the pandemic. It's a documentary about the real estate industry. Won 2 awards, film festivals, and is now currently being distributed and everything. So like in total, I've made 3 movies. All have won awards. All are being distributed. I'm in like 30 million homes nationwide, and some of them are global. And now that's it. That's what I'm doing now. I'm making movies every couple of years because they do take time to make. And I'm currently in talks with a female writer director who wants to make her true life story movie. She's working on the script that I'm helping her with. And eventually we will produce and make that movie. That'll be my 4th feature film and the first that I did not write.
Okay. So let's go back to my question about the horror movies. That was pretty crazy. I never really thought about how easy that is. And then, gosh, there's an old movie. Gosh, it wasn't Scream. Actually, it might have been Scream. It was where they were always like a young group of kids, and they're in like the one guy's, I think it's like his parents' house, and the guy's following them around, and it's just from the house to like a shed, and I think that's it. Like that's the whole movie. Well, they had to travel to the house.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like Scream. I want to say I know what you did last summer, but I don't think it's that either. It's definitely one of those types of movies, though.
Yeah.
I know what you did last summer was the guy with the hook and the hood, and he was always following them around the town.
Oh yeah.
But then Scream, there was Scream, they were going all over town and like the school and like all that other stuff. So that might have been too many locations. But yeah, they're generally pretty simple because it's more about the terror and the frights and the screams and the kills. So those were tough scenes for us to make, the kills. We had to do a lot of not special effects, but visual effects, which means using animal parts and animal blood and like prosthetics and things like that. Those things definitely took time and expensive, but for the most part, when you make a horror movie, it's a lot of like walking around and like talking about what's going on and a lot of like scream shots and things like that. So it doesn't require a lot.
Yeah, and that's pretty interesting because when you think about what makes a good movie, and I just watched a movie. My dog kept me up last night, and so I got up and just went and laid on the couch and started. I was like, let me just throw on HBO Max. So I picked like I think I went to browse or movies or whatever, and they were Shiva was the name of the movie. I don't know if you've seen this or anybody who's watching this has seen this, but Shiva is about. I was reading like the the synopsis of the movie,
Right.
and it all it said was something about a Jewish girl talking to like her ex girlfriend runs into a guy that like her sugar daddy at a funeral, and I was like, okay, I wonder what the rest of it's about. And
I don't think I've heard of this one. I might have to check it out.
it's like the very first scene is her having sex with the sugar daddy, and then She ends up
Way to start it off.
yeah, right. And then it goes to her at going to the a Shiva. I think is similar to like a wake or something with
Okay.
in Jewish culture, but
Oh,
that's
right.
that's the whole movie is them at the Shiva. And at first I was confused. I was like, oh, like when do we go to the next scene? And I kept watching, I'm like, oh, they're gonna be here the whole movie. And it's kind of a short movie, about an hour and something, but it's won awards and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, that's pretty crazy. Like very low budget. It's just a bunch of people at a Shiva, and that's it.
It's all about the in that case, you're talking about character development, you're talking about story, you're talking about pacing and plot. Like it's the dialogue. It's all about them talking. And I mean, there are so many examples of low budget movies that have won awards that took place in like one location. They didn't move, they didn't go anywhere. It was like, there's a really good old movie you might like. If you, this is a movie. Look, first of all, when it comes to movies, I recommend everybody who's listening or watching this right now, watch the movies from the 1980s.
Mm.
For example, The Big Chill. The Big Chill has a lot of famous actors in it. I mean, these are like all, if you watch this movie, it's all famous actors, but they're all old college friends that meet in this big house for like a reunion. I think it's a funeral, right? It's a funeral. Someone died of their friends. So the whole movie takes place in this house. But the stories that take place and the stuff they talk about and the stuff that happens in the house and like maybe a couple flashbacks, I think, but it's mostly all in this house. It doesn't really need to be a high production value if you can generate dialogue that will continuously engage the audience and make them want to, what happens next? What happens next? Well, why is this person saying that? And why did this person do that? And why is this happening? I want to find out. So yeah, you don't need these like 10 location 4 camera productions with 50 actors. You could get away with 2 to 3 actors, 1 or 2 locations, and 1 camera. And something that is kind of unsaid in Hollywood that people need to know, because if you want to make it as an actor or a director or a writer, you need to create and write what's called a single camera spec script, which is a very bare bones screenplay that has very minimal characters and 1 or 2 locations max that you can shoot all with 1 camera.
Mm.
And you can knock that out for, $100,000 or a couple $100,000, and this is Shiva sounds like one of those. It sounds like they probably spent a couple $100,000 and, they didn't use lots of locations or characters. So, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, and for that movie to just develop the way it did, it's not to give the whole thing away, but
I want to watch it. So don't spoil it.
it just follows that female, and it tells you about her family and then the interactions that she had with the other characters. As I said, the sugar daddy and the ex-girlfriend is what they tell you about. But it's just plot twist after plot twist, and
Ah,
it's very very good dialogue. And I was like, I appreciate this because they break down the relationships and connections between each person that they show in the whole movie. So I was like, I appreciate this.
that's how you do it, and it's not easy to do.
Yeah.
It's all about, coming up with unique, like you said, plot twists, and making movies is hard. It's fun, it's creative, but it's also very hard. And mainly it's hard for the reason that Hollywood doesn't allow us to break through. They don't allow us to, for example, Netflix is notorious for being really strict for who they allow to produce content for Netflix. You have to use a list of certain cameras. If you don't have one of the cameras on the list, just forget it. You're not allowed to shoot for them.
Oh my god.
Yep. It's a list of like, it's the RE, the Black Magic, the Red camera. There's these certain cameras that you need to have. And if you don't have them, if you're not using them, they will not accept it. And the reason is and think about it now, after I told you this, Think about it now when you watch Netflix content. When you're watching it, it all looks the same.
Mm.
It all has that same look. Like Ozark might have that blue tint, but the camera work looks the same. You know, when you watch Stranger Things, right? It looks the same as like another show that you're watching, Umbrella Academy,
Mm.
right? Umbrella Academy and Stranger Things. Like compare those two shows, and you'll notice the colors, the cinematography, everything about it is very similar, although it's tweaked in terms of maybe saturation or something. That's how they change it, right? But that's something that is tough for a lot of filmmakers because those cameras are freaking expensive. Whereas the cameras that I used for my movies were always $5,000 or less. You know, DSLRs with good lenses or like a larger, larger movie cameras, but they're always like 5 grand. They're not 20, 30, 40 grand because I couldn't afford it. You know, I had to pay for all the audio equipment and the second cameras and the cables and the batteries and the this and the that and 14 other things. And like altogether, sure, it was like 10 to 20,000. But um, that's the problem with a lot of these networks. So, Hollywood, they don't like it's no unsolicited material. You need to have an agent. You can't just submit. And so I feel like nowadays you need to be creative with your script and make it simple and low budget so that you can shoot it.
Mm.
That's what you need to. And a lot of people out there who are writing screenplays right now, and they're watching this and they're like, oh, I'm writing a screenplay and I want to make this movie. I got a quick word of wisdom for you. Write it as simple as you can with as few locations and characters as you can, so that if you can't get anyone to buy this script or you can't get anyone to make this script, you can cobble together a couple tens of thousands of dollars and shoot this movie yourself.
Something that you were talking about just really made me think about the similarities to the film industry and the music industry because um, the music industry used to have gatekeepers. And it was like, if you didn't know this person, if you weren't on this label, if you couldn't get in this studio, don't even try to make music. That was back in, I'd say, before the 90s, maybe,
Yeah.
and earlier. But now we've gotten this new technology. Um, Audio equipment has gotten so much better and affordable for everybody. So it's made it easier. And then we've got distribution like DistroKid and United Masters. These are tools that you can get your music on streaming services. And now it's become really easy for any musician to put music out there. Do you think the movie industry should be getting toward this? Or because I mean, we've got Netflix, we've got HBO, we've got all these things, so it should be easy, but it's not. As you're saying, Netflix is saying if you don't have these cameras, forget it. And but the music industry said, hey, as long as it sounds good, give it to us. So how does that,
Man,
are they not comparable?
that's a loaded question. It's a really, really, really good question, man. And I'm actually really excited to talk about this because I come from both worlds. I started out as a musician. This I can say I was fortunate enough to be handed an instrument at 3 years old and play the violin. And then my father's a pianist, my brother's a violinist, and I grew up in a family of people who play the guitar. And my whole life I was making music and producing it, getting on the radio, being a DJ, getting my CDs and records sold in clubs before the internet. So I know what it's like to sell music. And you're absolutely right. The gatekeepers always had a firm hand down. If you're not, a certain person and you don't have a certain connection, you're not going to get seen until the likes of YouTube and TikTok completely transformed the way your music is now heard and seen when you have like Justin Bieber and people like that who are found on YouTube. Lil Nas X with Old Town Road got caught up on TikTok and whatnot. So that's how you get found, right? So the difference is going to be pretty. I'm gonna go with a very simple comparison. To make music requires skill in terms of musical ability. If you can play the guitar and you can sing, you can produce a song using a microphone and some sort of recording device, and you can and it's a 3-minute song. 3 minutes. right? So if you have a catchy sound, catchy tune, catchy hook, and you can make this work, or you play the piano and singing like, I'm John Legend or any of the other singer pianists, it's real easy. And I'm saying this from someone who's experienced in it. It's easy to just put together a 3-minute song.
Mm-hmm.
Getting it out there is a totally different story. Now, MTV came around in the 80s with music videos, right? And that's how things kind of transformed. Now, to sell a song, you had to make a video to show people here's what the song is all about.
Mm.
Like Run DMC and Aerosmith did Walk This Way, and that kind of paved the way for like really theatrical and fun kind of music videos, right? And so that was the early version of the internet. It was like, look at our music, watch the music, and then like now you can feel it when you're dancing. You can see that, So that's kind of where the cinematography came in for music. But again, let's keep in mind it's 3 minutes, right? You can record it at a friend's studio or any studio you can hire. Like I remember back in the day before, before Pro Tools and before computers were really good at recording music, I would actually physically go to a music studio with all the big mixers and all that stuff. And I would get a guy to like master my CD or help me record a song using Cubase or Logic or something or whatever he had back then. And I'd pay the guy like $300. Here's your $300, sir. Hand me back the CD with the mastered song. I'm done. Mm. I have my friends call the radio stations and request a song over and over again until finally they play it. So, that's what you have to do. You have to hustle and you can hand the CD out to people. And how easy was it? Or the tape? How easy was it to hand out? You would pay 10 cents for CDs and like just hand them out to people and they'd start playing it. It's 3 minutes of their life. Mm. Movies, it's like a completely different animal.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between a skateboard and a rocket to space. A song, you can make a skateboard with a piece of wood and 4 wheels and boom, you got a skateboard. You're done. It's quick. It's easy. A rocket, forget it. You need teams of people to create this master and then launch it. It's the same thing with movies. You need a team of people, actors, cast, crew. You need cameras. You need audio. You need, editors. You need machinery. You need locations. Oh my God, wardrobe, special effects. I mean, the list goes on. Look at the credits at the end of a movie.
Yeah.
There's like thousands of people. What are the credits at the end of a music video? Directed by.
Yeah.
There's nothing to it. Music is, you can literally make a song. I know people who can literally grab a guitar and make up a song right there on the fly. Boom, done. I posted on my Instagram about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, it might have been. I was just messing around and I made a quick little 80s tune, a quick little 80s song. I made it in like an hour. But boom, there it is. And it's that simple. And unfortunately, you're right. The movie industry is nowhere near to where the music industry is. It's completely different. And we have to remember something else too. Where do most musicians make their money? Because it ain't Spotify and it ain't TikTok and it ain't YouTube and it's not from selling songs. It's from touring. Mm-hmm. It's from performing those songs in public at concerts in front of 100,000 people. What's the equivalent of that for movies? There is none. So how do so music and movies are totally different, forms of entertainment. And now I will say this, being that I'm in the film industry and I just released my 3rd movie, it was a lot easier to release this one than it was the previous 2 because it has changed. Now you have Tubi and Plex. These are independent streaming platforms that were purchased by Fox and Fandango. So Fox owns Tubi, Fandango owns Plex. So it opens up those platforms to like 50 million people, right? And they're free to watch platforms. You don't have to pay to watch anything on there. So anybody who has a good movie can submit their movies to these networks. And there's a place called filmhub.com. You can submit your movie with all the graphics. And if they accept your movie, if they like it, they will then start submitting it to a plethora of platforms, not just Tubi and Plex, but there's a lot of other ones out there too. And they'll just start submitting it to them and you can start showing your movie in places. So it's actually a lot easier than it was even 5 years ago.
So, something that you were bringing up earlier that I wanted to touch on again was you said go back and watch movies in the 80s. Was Pulp Fiction made in the 80s?
I believe that was 90s.
It was 90s? Okay.
Yeah, Samuel L. Jackson said he should have won an Oscar for that.
Probably should have, for real. That something about Pulp Fiction. Um, I just love it because of how the story develops. And I don't think we have anything like that nowadays. This is just, you were talking about movies with huge cast, and, big cast, everybody's a star. I think nowadays, usually, we're focusing on that one person, like a Mark Wahlberg, Dwayne Johnson, Scarlett Johansson. We'll have like, oh, this is so and so's movie. This is that one person's movie, and if you don't like that person, you're just not going to watch the movie because that's it. It's circled around that.
Right.
Do you think that that's a good or bad trend? It's probably got its
Man,
pros and cons.
got some great questions, man. Well, you got to look at it this way. I guess the first thing off the top of my head is the actors you just mentioned are each going to be requiring at least $20 million for the movie.
No.
So as soon as you pay Scarlett Johansson $20 million for a movie, that doesn't leave a lot of budget for other actors.
Mm.
So you are banking the success of the movie on her. Same goes for everyone else you mentioned. So when you cast Will Smith for King Richard, for example, which was a great film, he just won the SAG award for that role, and you're banking on Will Smith, his name pulling in the attention to watch that film. The other people in the movie, there were a couple of other actors that I recognize. I remember the guy who played the Punisher from
Mm.
Netflix. He is the tennis coach. So there's some other people in there, but you're right. It's always going to be that leading character. Whereas back in the 80s and 90s, you might have seen like Pulp Fiction was Uma Thurman and Samuel Jackson and John Travolta and the guy who played Marcellus Wallace and a lot of other people that were in that film. Eric Stoltz played the drug dealer. Lots of famous people were in that movie, but you also have to keep in mind something. Quentin Tarantino had a knack for, he probably paid them very little. When you have an ensemble cast meaning multiple major characters, they take a pay cut because they're sharing the screen time with those characters. And what I mean by that is, for example, Eric Stoltz being the drug dealer, although he at one point might have been a famous actor at one point, at that time, he probably wasn't that famous. And they probably only needed him on set for 1 day or 2 days. So you can get away with paying him $10,000 and he's happy with that day, right? John Travolta and Samuel L., they were on screen a lot more. But again, how many times were they on screen? And when you plan your shooting schedule, the locations, the days, and all that kind of stuff, if you plan your shooting schedule wisely, you again might be able to knock that shooting out in maybe 2 weeks. Uma Thurman might have only been on set for 3 days. You got her in the milkshake scene, you got her in the OD scene, and you got her in the some other scene, 3 scenes maybe. That's 3 days. So you pay her 30 grand, she's happy, that kind of thing. Also, some filmmakers offer percentages to actors. There's a really famous story about Matt Damon turning down the role of Avatar. I believe it's because he was doing Jason Bourne at that time, I think. But he turned down like a 10% royalty of Avatar, which made billions of dollars, and he would have made like $1 billion or something. So he said it was the most expensive role he turned down. It went to Sam Worthington, as we know, the guy who did Terminator. And I don't think he got the percentage. I think Sam Worthington just got paid money. So, but this is how it works, man. Like your name matters, your fame matters. And also, is it an ensemble cast? For example, like Robert Downey Jr. for Iron Man, I don't know what he got paid, but maybe it was $20 million. But Iron Man in Avengers, with the other Avengers, they might have each gotten paid $5 million. Because they're all on screen, maybe less, or maybe they were required to work less, or because the cast was so big, they had to kind of, all right, guys, listen, We have all of you in the same movie. We can't pay you all $20 million, but we can pay you each $5 million, and this is going to be a huge movie, and we'll give you each like 1% of the profits, something like that. Plus, they get merchandise, Plus, they're I mean, I've never understood how actors could demand such. I mean, you make so much money in your movies. Like even just one movie for $20 million, isn't that enough? Apparently not. They just got to keep making more money. So, but yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. Going back, plus movies cost less money back then because there were no special effects.
Hmm.
Right there, the locations were something I love about 80s and 90s movies is you were able to shoot in so many locations, and you get to kind of look back in time. It's time traveling. You get to time travel. You get to see what the 80s and 90s looked like on the streets, the locations, the buildings. And it's so cool, man, because nowadays everything looks modern. It's all done in green screen. It's all special effects. Not back then, man. Not back then. They would literally fly. You'd see the plane take off and go to like the next city, and they'd be shooting in that city. And then you'd like have like, a town, and it was an actual town. It wasn't like a Hollywood studio town. Like 80s and 90s movies are the best to watch to learn about story development, character development, plot, and all that kind of stuff.
When when you were talking about the flying thing, can you get away with just shooting something in the same city? Is that a thing? So like, let's say you have an actor say that they're so the movie is taking place, let's say in New York City, and then everybody knows it's in New York City, and then let's say they're like, yeah, I got to take a flight to L.A. or something like that. Or Chicago. Let's use Chicago because LA probably looks a lot different. It does look
Right.
different than Chicago. So let's say the actor says they're going to take a flight to Chicago. You see the plane taking off, but can you still just shoot that in New York and get away with that?
Right. So the airplanes taking off are usually just airplanes in an airport taking off. It's never the actual airplane. That's pretty standard practice. The people inside the airplane is going to be a set. It's going to be the interior of an airplane that is on a set, and it's just cut off just a section of the airplane. Usually they're decommissioned or broken down airplanes that don't work anymore. They buy them for a fraction of the price, and then they cut them, and then they use them on the set. So those are just airplanes. They're not in the air. uh, in terms of shooting in the same city, absolutely, they've done it a million times. Usually they'll shoot in Canada. Toronto is a very popular city. Vancouver, like these cities that are like really cool, modern looking cities. They look like New York. They look like Chicago. They look like LA, but they're not. You might even be able to shoot scenes of LA in Mexico, or other locations that have palm trees with buildings. It all depends on how you do it. Again, it's all about shooting schedules and locations. Like, let's say, for example, you're shooting a scene where you are taking a lunch break from work, coming out of your office building, and eating your lunch outside of a building in Los Angeles on the side of the road. Well, the shooting of the building on the interior, the office building, it could be anywhere. It could be Toronto. It could be your hometown. It could be freaking Minnesota. It doesn't matter. It just has to be an office building, right? So you can be shooting on the inside, and then on the outside, you shoot that quick 2-minute scene. It may be in a town that looks like Los Angeles, or it is Los Angeles, because sometimes you do need to show that it's like the strip, the Los Angeles strip. So you got to show the street signs and all that. But again, if you're shooting for 2 minutes, it's not a big deal, right? So it's all about interior and exterior shots and that kind of thing. And but most production companies are notorious for shooting in Canada, Mexico, the islands, even in Europe.
Something that I always thought about was that because of like, I think I heard that Seinfeld was shot majorly in New York and then moved to L.A. or something like that, and then It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I think I heard it was mainly shot in Philly and then it moved
Right.
to New York or something like that. And I was
Yeah.
like, if you're from Philly, you're gonna notice it. But if you're not from Philly, and the majority of the U.S. and the world is not, we're not gonna notice. Like, who cares? We just see a good show. So
Right.
I've always thought that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and again, you got to keep in mind, like that's a good example. Always Sunny in Philadelphia is those guys are always shooting inside of a bar. That bar could be on the set of a studio.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they're shooting on the interiors of their apartments.
Oh yeah,
That could be a set. You
yeah.
could have literally a set built of all these apartments. I mean, you don't need to be in a city. You could be anywhere to shoot stuff. And I did that for my movies, especially Bucks County Massacre. Most of it took place in the woods in Pennsylvania,
Hmm.
and we rented a house from the state park system. And then some scenes we had to shoot elsewhere. We shot, we were done the movie. We realized, oh, we need to reshoot some scenes. Well, I didn't go back there. I just shot it somewhere else. It looks the same. no one knows. No one knows the difference.
Yeah. Do
So
do you think dialogue is something that should take a long time, or if you're just good at it, you can just, just kind of run through it like we were talking about with music, you can just, some people are really great with lyrics, and then some people take 3 years to make an album, and then other people can like, yeah, I could finish this album in a few months, write it all, I'm done. Is that something that's it should take a while and you should get your dialogue down?
phew, man, you got these zingers. Jeez. Oh man. Makes me think about it. No, it's good. It's good to talk about because it's these are really good questions that people need to hear because I'm sure people are curious. Like, man, why can't I make an album in 3 weeks? Like, because you're not John Lennon or you're not, Michael Jackson, whoever makes these songs, like these people are geniuses, man.
Yeah.
These people are musical geniuses. It's just who they are. They hear these songs in their head. They just put them down on paper real quick. They get inspired by something. The lyrics come to them. Doesn't mean that you have to be the same way. I mean, everybody's inspired in different ways. Everybody's got different methods of producing content. And music is a tough one because you have to hear the music in your head. I mean, look at Mozart and Beethoven and these classical composers who were making music when they were like little kids. They just were able to compose this music out of nowhere, out of thin air. And people still don't realize, how did Mozart do that? You know, he was a genius, and when it comes to film and writing dialogue, that's a great question because it is very difficult to write realistic, not just dialogue, realistic dialogue
Oh,
that that people will believe. And here's how you do it. I've written about 6 screenplays right now. I'm not an award-winning screenplay. I've never sold a screenplay. I've tried to get into screenplay competitions and things like that. It is not easy. And yes, I've been getting better and better and better and better at writing screenplays to the point where I think that I'm about 80% there. I'm like, I started out at 10%. I got to 20, 30. Every screenplay I wrote, I got 10% better at it. Now I think I'm at the point where, for example, the next screenplay I write is going to be a winner, because I figured out all the formulas, and there's a lot of formulas out there. First thing I want to tell you, if you want to write a screenplay, you have to read this book. It's called Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. You got to read this book because it gives you the Hollywood formula. Follow it. Get a whiteboard, get your white cards, index cards, get 40 of them, write down 40 scenes, pop them up on the whiteboard. That's what I do. You want to write an outline and a beat sheet. But here's how you do it. Say you have 90 pages, 90 minutes of a movie. Just get through that script. Just write it out. Just write it all out. Don't worry about if you're wondering, oh, was that right? Or should I research to make sure that was right? Don't care. Keep going.
mm,
Dialogue, write generic dialogue just to get the point of the scenes across. Once you can do that, you're going to have to go back and do what's called a page 1 rewrite. You got to do it anyway. So just get it over with, get that script over with, get the ideas out of your head, get it all out of your head. And I've been able to do a whole screenplay in 2 weeks doing that.
dang.
And that's hard to do. Most people write screenplays in like 6 months because they take their time. Don't take your time. Write a screenplay. Look at Sylvester Stallone. He supposedly wrote Rocky in a weekend.
Oh my God.
And then when the studios wanted it, he said, I got to be the star. They said, fine. He won all the Academy Awards and became Sylvester Stallone. Same goes with John Hughes. John Hughes wrote Home Alone in a weekend. He holed himself up in a hotel room and knocked it out and needed no edits. John Hughes was a freaking genius. You know, Breakfast Club, Sweet 16, 16 Candles, all these amazing movies John Hughes did. So he was notoriously known for writing these screenplays in just a couple of days or a couple of weeks. But he had it in there, man. Not all of us have it in there. It's not easy to just, when I'm writing a screenplay, I'm visualizing the characters doing the things that they're saying or doing in my head. I'm watching the movie in my head as I'm writing it. So if she drops the ice cream and the guy picks it up and then falls in the ice cream, I'm watching him do that in my head. If the girl's walking the dog and another guy's walking the dog and the dogs chase after each other and they meet that way, I'm watching the dog going like, like I'm seeing it in my head so that I can describe it properly. You know what I mean? And so I always tell people, write the script really quick, just get it out of your head and then go back. And here's what you have to do. Here's the secret of dialogue. And again, I'm no expert. I'm just giving you the stuff that I've learned, right? Dialogue. It's going to take you 3 tries to make a line of dialogue perfect. And here's how you do it. You want to write a good line of dialogue. You want to write a better line of dialogue. And then you want to write the best line of dialogue. Let me try to give you an example. Let's see if we can do this. This is tough because I don't have an idea in front of me and I don't have, but here we go. You got a NASA hat on. Let's do something let's do like a NASA thing right there. So, guy's at his control panel, looking at a launch is about to take off, and a woman comes up to him and she's bringing him coffee. Hey, John, did you want coffee before the launch? Can't you see I'm busy? Okay, I'll bring it back later. Hold on, I want the coffee. All right, did you want cream and sugar? Okay, so that's basic dialogue. Okay, so let's make it better. Here's how you make it better, right? John's at a control panel. He's watching the launch. It's like, maybe 2 minutes out. She comes up to him. Hey, John, I brought you some black coffee. Do you want it? And he's like, do you think they have coffee in space? And she says, I never thought of that. Maybe the sugar cubes are floating around. Dialogue's a little better, right?
Yeah.
A little better. Okay, let's make it the best. I'm going to try. This is tough because now I'm on the spot.
That was good.
So John's at the control panel. Here comes the girl with the coffee. And let's say that this time she spills it, right? She spills the coffee by accident because she's so nervous. And the guy turns around and says, in space, that coffee would have just floated around and I could have picked it up with my mouth. And, something like that, just something imaginative like that. And she was like, you're right. I could have tossed a sugar cube your way. We could have, so like, maybe that's not the best, but that's how you have to think. You have to think, how can I make this simple dialogue better and then best? And it has to be a little outrageous. It has to be a little unrealistic. Like that wouldn't have happened. They wouldn't have said that, but it's perfect.
That's what me and my wife talk about all the time when we watch a movie is it realistic? And I think movies that as we're saying, like realistic, like would this actually happen? I think that draws the audience in more because we can relate to it. If we can't relate to it, then it's almost like, what am I watching here? One thing that, have you seen Vikings? It's on, well, there's a million.
There's a new one now too, 100 years in the past or the future or something like that. I haven't gotten into that yet because there's like 17 million seasons. So
yeah, there's a new Viking show. I think it's either on Netflix.
Netflix. Yeah.
Well, my wife, she thinks it looks great and everything, of course, but she didn't like the dialogue because she said that there wasn't enough of a, not climax, what's the word I'm trying to think of? There wasn't enough build up and then like,
character development.
Yeah. She said it was like, there was no surprise. Like,
I watched a little bit of it and I thought the same exact thing. And that's why I turned it off. So she's right. You can tell your wife that a filmmaker says she's right.
And that's something that I think is huge because if there's no aha moment or like build up, like there's an anime called Death Note, and in Death Note it was written beautifully because the whole story is like this guy, he's in like high school and he finds a notebook that a demon from another world dropped on Earth because the demon was bored, and he drops this notebook on Earth so that the kid in high school can, if you whatever you write in the notebook.
It was a really good show, or
Yeah,
was it a movie or a show? I saw it.
they made a real life version on Netflix.
Yes, that's
Oh,
the one I watched.
okay, if you watch the anime, you're gonna be like, that was trash.
Okay, because the one I saw was really good.
Yeah, and I thought about that because I thought that one was horrible, but I'm like, I only think it's horrible because I've seen the anime.
Oh, okay,
And I
all
was
right.
like, if I never saw the anime, I probably think this is actually kind of
Yeah,
good.
I never saw the anime.
But it was written beautifully because there were so many plot twists and so many things where you never saw it coming. Like it was one of those things where you thought you knew what was going on, and then they just like completely blew your mind. And that's what I loved about it. It never ran out. It was just constantly happening. I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. But if you don't have that in your movie, where and especially if you're constantly having dialogue where people already know what the person's about to say, then it's kind of like, it's kind of boring. But if you've got those plot twists, it's great.
And that's a good point too. People know what you're going to say already. You need to combat that. You need to write what they're not thinking you're going to say. And this is where I go from good to best, to better to best, right? You need to say, okay, well, they're probably thinking I'm going to say this next. Well, no, I'm going to make it better.
Mm.
So if a girl walks up to me with a dog on the street and I'm like, oh, what a cutie. But maybe the dog is missing a leg. And then you have to write that in there. Like the dog is missing a leg. And maybe he's on a roller skate instead or something. You got to make it outrageous, right? And then he'll say, what's his name? Wheelie? That's what the guy that I just make something up like that. Like, but that's how you gotta. And she's like, actually, no, his name's Roscoe. That's kind of mean. He's sensitive to it. And then maybe the dog whines, and then you like, give me paw. I mean wheel. Like so, like you gotta like you have to make it funny or dramatic or exciting or scary, but you have to do it in a way that and it should not be realistic. You're saying, the more realistic it is, the more you relate to it. Yeah, sure. But that's not what people want.
Mm.
People want outrageous. People want the unexpected. Watch romantic comedies in particular. Mostly when you watch romantic comedies, you're like, this stuff never happens. It just never does. But
Yeah.
but people love it. They love to feel like it could happen, right? It's all about what could. And if you listen to dialogue, especially in romantic comedies, that stuff never happens on dates ever, like ever. It's so I just watched one called I Want You Back. One of the guys from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Charlie Day was in it, right? And I'm watching this movie, right? And the first 30 minutes is both of them, the girl in the movie and Charlie Day, both get broken up by their significant others. So now they're single, they're depressed.
I seen it.
It was really good. It was really good writing. That's now you want a good example of good writing? Watch I Want You Back. It is phenomenally written, but super, super, super unrealistic. Because if you watch that first 30 minutes where they meet and they start talking and they're drunk on their dates and stuff like that, it's just unrealistic. They're plotting to like when it's like people don't do that kind of thing, but it's entertaining.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, you want to entertain people. So how do you do that? Outrageous, unrealistic, best. Get
Mm.
rid of the good, get rid of the better. You got to get up there. And it means that you have to be a little crazy. You got
Um,
to be a little crazy.
Something I was thinking about just now, going back to what you were talking about with the cast and how much it cost. The similarity with that and like being a team owner of like a professional sports league, like they've got a salary cap, and that's just like a budget with a movie, and you have to figure out like you can't have Patrick Mahomes and then also the best running back in the league and the best wide receiver. Like you can only spend so much money, and
Right.
movies are the same way. Like you've got a budget, and then there's only so many people that you can spend money on before you run out of money. Do you think that um, when you're able to put these cast of people together, do you is there certain ways that you need to sacrifice, who can play what roles, and in like, with the venues, do you sacrifice your venue for a better person, or do you spend more on the venue and sacrificing your people? Is there certain areas that you should spend more?
Well, so this question really falls down to one person, the line producer. The line producer is all about budget, and they have to help the production, the director, and the studios make these decisions. So if the budget is, say, $20 million, and the actors are going to cost 10 and you have 10 left, well, then the allocation has to go into, like, camera work, audio, editing, visual effects, and wardrobe, makeup, so on and so forth. And it has to be allocated from, I've never worked on a Hollywood production, but I do know that they work on unions. They work with unions. So the unions, just like um, sports players, have caps. They have, like, these are your salaries for the production: $50,000 for the year, or $50,000 for the production. It's like, this is what you're getting, period. So that's in the spreadsheet. It's kind of all in the line. It tells you, like, this is what you're going to pay these people. And when you present it to the studio, say, here's our budget, you figured all that out. If the studio says, well, we can't pay you 20 million, we can pay you 10 million, well, you got some decisions to make. That's where you might cut some locations. You might cut a character. A lot of writers, what we do is, if say you have like a Brad Pitt and you have a Tom Cruise, and then you have like Nicole Kidman, and you have Meryl Streep, and these four actors are all like 10 million each, but that's 40 million, and the budget only calls for 20 million. Well, the writer might have to make this ridiculously impossible call of combining the Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt characters in writing and make their personas kind of mesh, and then the Meryl Streep and the Nicole Kidman have them mesh, and now it's just a woman and a man, and both of the personalities and both of the scenarios happen from both of those characters all in one, and you just saved yourself 20 million. That's happened many times in scripts. You have to, like, cut a character but add it into another character.
Mhm.
That's an easy way of saving money.
Speaking of that, that makes me think of like Eddie Murphy with
Oof,
the Nutty Professor. Like, he's
Nutty Professor.
playing all these characters, and you're saving money by by him just being all these people. Like, that's
Or coming to America, he did it too.
yeah, yeah. It's amazing when people are able to do stuff like that, because
Absolutely, it's brilliant.
yeah, it speaks volumes to, number one, their dynamic range of who they are as a person. And I've always thought that I think we put too much pressure on certain actors to be a certain type of person. Like, we'll see certain actors just only play certain roles. Like, that's all they do. Like, people make fun of I think it's a Hispanic guy that was in Fast and the Furious or something, and his name is always Hector in every movie, and he does the same thing in every movie, and it's
He's
just
he's
like,
typecast.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, typecast, and that the brilliance of people like Will Smith. He'll play a serious character, and then he'll play a funny character. We've got,
A superhero
yeah, play the superhero, and then I think Kevin Hart recently came out with, I think it was a Netflix show or something
with
like.
Wesley Snipes. It was true story.
Yeah, and he
It
is
was
a
amazing.
he's a comedian, but now he's playing
Serious.
his serious drama side. That's something that I think we need more of in the movie industry, is because I think it shows the audience the, I guess, like a forgiveness factor. You know what I mean? Like, we are allowing, not saying that we should dictate what people can do, but we need to open up our minds to what people want to do in life. They don't have to do this one thing. They can do whatever they want. If Kevin Hart wants to direct, let him direct, or if he wants to produce, let him produce. Like, he doesn't have to just be this
Now he's
film
doing
guy.
all those things.
Yeah, yeah.
with was it Beating Heart Productions or whatever it's called. He's got his own production company, and he's an entrepreneur investing in companies like on Shark Tank and stuff like that too. So he really took his thing to the next level. There is an actor that stands out from what you're describing to me, of someone who was able to not get typecast. He did it in a way that not many actors or actresses have been able to do, and it's Leonardo DiCaprio.
Mm,
He's been able to really pick and choose the scripts that he knew would show his true potential every single movie he's done, and not typecast. And that's hard to do, man.
yeah.
It's hard to do.
I think I was listening to a podcast and what's Matthew McConaughey was on it, and he said somebody had hit him up to do another romantic comedy. He was like, "I'm not doing another romantic comedy."
It's not always worth the money.
Yeah,
You know, you might get paid $10 million to make this movie, but you're losing a piece of your soul when you do it. And that's the issue. And you'll see a lot of actors that I'm noticing, a lot of actors nowadays that are jumping the shark. I feel bad for saying this, but Bruce Willis has been doing that. He's been in every movie. I see them online, these sci-fi movies and horror movies and action movies, and they're all very generic. If you watch one of them, they're painful to watch. The dialogue is very like, "I'll be right there. How did that feel? I'm gonna get you." Like it's like, oh my god, it's like an AI is writing these scripts, and they're just like, "Here you go." You know, just like it's pretty. When you see that, it feel. I don't. I'm guessing he's doing it for his kids. That's always my thinking, is they're doing it to pay for their families. That's what I think. I don't know, but I'd love to know what actually how that works. Another person that we didn't mention that made his $1 billion fortune and has helped a large community of underrepresented actors is Tyler Perry with his Medea movies. He was Medea, right? He produced, he directed, he self-funded all of his Broadway plays. They started off on Broadway, and he was able to make this ginormous, the largest film studio in Atlanta is his, right? All because he was able to control the production, the direction, the writing, and starring in these movies. And when he got like a TV show, the studio would say, "Here's $200 million for a series." He would produce it for like 50 mil and pocket 150 mil. It's like, dude, that's genius.
yeah, absolutely. Um, it's about time, man. If you could give everybody your everything, like where they can see your stuff at, websites that you have, and let us just see what you got.
Yeah, man. My main website where you can find me is jasonsherman.org. You'll find everything on there: my story, my blog, my podcast, my course, Startup Essentials, my book, Strap on Your Boots. And then my film website is delphiafilms.com. It's Philadelphia, but without the Philly, just delphiafilms.com. You'll find Bucks County Massacre, Cutting Corners, Kings Highway. You can watch all of them on there. And that's pretty much it, man. I'm on social media. People can hit me up on social media. I always answer comments and feedback on YouTube and things like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. I learned a ton about the film industry, and I hope everybody who was watching, especially if they want to get into film, has learned a lot about, especially your expertise and how you walked us through getting a better dialogue. That was pretty cool.
That was fun. I had a blast, man.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.